Hello friend, welcome back to my kitchen. My name is Becky if you're new, and today we are going to be making a whole lot of homemade bread products using as much fresh milled flour as we can. One of my goals for 2025 is to get even more comfortable working with fresh milled flour and working with making my own homemade bread products as much as possible. For the month of January and February, my goal is to exclusively use homemade bread products in my cooking. Tomorrow we are doing a huge freezer cooking day, and I need some of these bread products for tomorrow. So if you are new and this is the first time you're in my kitchen, welcome. Please consider subscribing, because if cooking from scratch and learning where your food comes from is something that's interesting to you, we do a lot of that around here, and I would love to have you along for the journey and you don't want to miss out for tomorrow. So what I'm going to do first is mill my flour. I have 3 different kinds of wheat berries in my kitchen. This is a soft white wheat. It has less gluten in it. It's good for making things like pastries and waffles, which we're going to be making. This is a hard red wheat, which is good for those really dark, crusty loaves. It has more gluten in it. And this is a hard white wheat, which has a lot more gluten in it, and it's good for baking, but it's a little bit lighter and has a little bit more mild of a flavor than the hard red wheat. So we're actually gonna grind 2 different types of flour today for a couple of our different recipes. The first one we're gonna work with is this hard red wheat because it has more gluten. And when I said baking, I mean things like breads, yeasted breads, versus the soft is good for baking things like muffins and pastries. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my mill turned on. I just ground a ton of flour because we're gonna be using this in a couple different recipes, and we are quadrupling this bagel recipe. This is a new recipe to me, and so I'm excited to see how it turns out. I think it should be just fine. It has really good reviews. And the first way we're gonna make this is the way the recipe is written. The second time we make it, I'm going to add some inclusions, and we're gonna do a double batch here, and then the second time I make it, I'm gonna do a double batch. So this recipe doesn't call for just fresh milled flour. It's a mixture of fresh milled flour and bread flour, which I like that because I am just getting into making my bread products with fresh milled flour, and there's a big learning curve. And so how I've been approaching this for it to be a little bit more user-friendly for myself is to slowly work on adding it into my bread recipes. And I liked this recipe because it was a 50-50 split. Some of the recipes we're gonna be making, or I guess one of the recipes we're gonna be making today is 100% fresh milled, and it is delicious. What I have found is with fresh milled products, especially if I do 100%, they are more satisfying and filling because they have more protein in it and more fiber. So to my bread flour and my fresh milled hard white wheat, I'm gonna add my salt. I should not have put my tablespoon in with my yeast. I'm gonna give this a little bit of a mix. Plug it in first. If I ever have time to do a big batch cooking day like this, I like to, especially if I'm gonna double or triple or quadruple the recipes, because I'm gonna messy up my kitchen and messy up this one time, but we're not just gonna get bagels today. We are gonna get a lot of other things done, and I'm only gonna have to wash this mixer one time. This is a very simple recipe. We already have all the ingredients together. I'm gonna put our yeast water mixture in here. I actually put a ½ cup less of the bread flour in here because I want to mix this and see what it looks like, and then I can add the last bit of flour if I need to, if I feel like the dough is a little sticky. Before I knead this, I'm going to let it rest for about 5 minutes. While this is resting, I'm going to measure out my water for the next batch. And this batch I'm changing up just a little bit because I'm gonna add craisins to it. Because I think when we turn some of these bagels into bagel sandwiches, the sweet bite of a craisin in the bagel would be delicious. And so instead of using honey for this as the sweetener, I'm going to go ahead and use maple syrup. So to my water, I'm just going to go ahead and add my maple syrup and yeast. Because there's 2 tablespoons of yeast in this recipe, this is going to be a quick rise bagel. We're going to let that rest, and we're going to start kneading this dough. While this was kneading for 5 minutes, I went ahead and I also pre-measured out all my ingredients for the English muffins that we're going to be making, just so that I'm going to have those ready to go. But before we're going to make our English muffins, we're going to make a second double batch of bagels. So this dough looks fantastic. I'm glad I didn't add that extra 1/4 cup of flour because this dough looks perfect. So I'm going to get this into this bowl, and I'm going to let this rise in this bowl. Normally, when I'm just making one batch of some sort of bread product, I will let it rise in here. But because I need this multiple times today, I'm going to transfer it to this bowl. And we'll use this bowl for something else, so even though I'm getting this dirty, we'll use it again. I just put a little bit of sprig on there so it doesn't dry out on the top. And now I'm going to just pre-measure out 3 cups of our fresh milled hard white wheat and 3 cups of our bread flour. I'm kind of fluffing the bread flour a little bit too, just so that it's not super compacted and I'm not adding too much flour. 2, 3, good amount of salt. Our maple syrup, water, and yeast mixture. I'm gonna let this rest for 5 minutes and then we'll keep kneading it. Look how beautiful that looks. It's not quite done kneading yet at this point, but I'm gonna go ahead and add, I think, 1 cup of craisins. These are really cool craisins. They are sweetened with apple juice concentrate instead of sugar, and my family loves them. Let's see what that looks like mixed in. It's gonna take a second for these to get mixed in, but that's probably good. I think I'm gonna add an extra 1/2 cup. Maybe 3/4 of a cup? No, let's try 1/2 cup first. This looks and smells incredible. If you're interested in my grain mill or where I buy my grains or these cranberries, I can link all that stuff and the recipes down below for you. I started getting into fresh milling my flour years ago, but I had a grain mill I didn't really like. It didn't get my flour fine enough, so I kind of gave up on it for a while. And then I had that in my Amazon cart for a really long time, and I just recently purchased it, and I'm loving it. But it did take me a while to finally take the plunge, and I kind of wish I had done it sooner, because the flavor is so good of fresh milled. So we have our 2 bagel recipes done. Both of those recipes are double recipes. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna use the same mixer, and we can go ahead and make our English muffins. When it comes to these English muffins, I'm totally making up this recipe. I could not find a recipe online that was what I wanted. So I'm gonna make this up. If it turns out, I will write it up and link it for you. I think it's gonna turn out just fine, but time will tell. I have warmed up milk and water in here. I'm gonna go ahead and add my yeast to this. 3, 4 and a half. I'm gonna add honey. Probably should have added the honey first. There's something about honey and fresh milled flour that is just so good. Gonna mix that together. We're gonna let that sit while we measure out our dry ingredients. In the mixer, I'm gonna add 3 cups of bread flour. 2 cups of our fresh milled flour. Salt. 1/2 cup of butter. Let's get all that goodness out of there. I finally bought myself some more spatulas, which is amazing. Feels good. Whenever you're looking at bread and you see those strands, like right there, that is actually the gluten in it. I did have to add more flour to this because it was almost like pancake batter. So this is a good texture. You do want English muffin dough on the wetter side because that's what's gonna give you those like craggy, bubbly, yummy bits. So we're gonna put this in here. And now we've got our 3rd dough rising. What I'm gonna do next is actually get our waffle batter going so that I can be cycling through waffles as I do other things in the kitchen. I'm in my house. The bagel dough is almost ready as well. I know that my waffle batter can just sit and wait for me, and I can work through the batter in the waffle maker. So I think that's what I'm gonna do next. And I'm just gonna go ahead and make it right in this bowl. I just measured out this flour when I was cleaning, and I have about 1 cup's worth of fresh milled wheat in here. And I'm just gonna get the rest of the wheat ground in here. And for the waffles, I'm actually gonna use soft white wheat, even though there's a little bit of hard white wheat in there, that's gonna be fine. I'm just gonna use that. And that won't make a difference at all. So I'm gonna get this turned on. For these waffles, I'm actually gonna use them in 2 different ways. One, they're just gonna be waffles prepped in my freezer, so when I need waffles, I have waffles. I'm just plugging in my waffle iron over here. And 2, I'm actually gonna make breakfast sandwiches out of these. I think it's gonna be absolutely delicious, and so that's what I'm gonna do. But first I need the waffles so that I can make breakfast sandwiches out of them tomorrow. And I need to look at my recipe. I put a couple of the things away. One thing I do like about this recipe is that it is 100% fresh milled flour. So the first thing I just added in there was salt. I'm gonna add some maple syrup. You could go ahead and skip the maple syrup if you don't want any sweetener, but I think the little bit of sweetness to counterbalance the savoriness that we're gonna add is going to be delicious. Then I need some butter, but I need to melt this butter because I'm not gonna be able to mix it into that batter unless it's melted. Oh, I'm gonna use some of these dishes I just rinsed off. I didn't wash them, I just rinsed them. The one thing I'm not gonna add to this though is I'm not gonna add any vanilla. I think the maple flavor with the sausage that we're gonna add is going to be fantastic. Buttermilk. Whole milk. I should have added this earlier. This is baking powder. This already smells incredible, and we haven't even cooked them yet. Between the maple syrup and, where's my cookie scoop? Can't find it. And the fresh milled flour, it smells incredible. Waffles and pancakes are 2 of the things that I have found. You can use 100% fresh milled flour and it does not affect the quality or the texture at all. When it comes to yeasted things, that's what I'm still working on. Let's see. I'll just use my smaller cookie scoop and do 1.5 of them. Let's see. I don't want to overfill them, but I want to make sure they're full enough that we can make a little sandwich out of them. Okay, so this is going to take a while to cook all of these. I really need to get, these are the like Eggo style waffles, the mini waffles. I really need to get a 4-1, but right now I just have a 2. That's why I want to get this mixed up so I can just keep cooking these as I do other things, because I think our first dough, bagel dough, is ready to go. This one is almost ready. What I need to do before I shape my bagels is get some water on to boil so we can boil our bagels. If you don't know, you boil bagels before you bake them. So that's why I have this on to boil, and I probably should take these off the stove since I have the burner on. I think my first round of waffles are done. These look incredible, and they smell even better. These look perfect. So I did 2 scoops. So now we're gonna shape our bagels. We're gonna shape our bagels. We're gonna start with our plain ones because that dough is ready to go. And I have to look at the recipe to see how many this is supposed to make. 16. I want to make sure they're big enough for breakfast sandwiches. Not all of these will be turned into breakfast sandwiches, but quite a few of them will be. Okay, so obviously has a different texture than when I've made just plain white bagels before, which makes sense because they have whole wheat in them. I wasn't gonna do it, but I think I'm gonna do it. Pulling out the scale. I'm gonna weigh the dough in grams. 1,413, and I'm gonna divide that by 16, is 88 grams. So let's see what that looks like. That is 86. It's kind of a small bagel. Okay, I'm gonna do 12 bagels.
If you had told me 2 years ago that I would be weighing out my dough to try to get equal sized bagels, I would think you're silly because this is not my general personality. This is where Josh and I differ very much. If he was in the kitchen baking these bagels, he would thrive on measuring out the dough in grams and making sure each one is exactly the same size. And typically I am one that is super fond of just eyeballing and going from there. But the more I bake, the more I enjoy weighing things out. And so that is what I ended up doing on this day. I was not really planning on doing that. I think this is only the 3rd or 4th time I've done it, and I actually really enjoy weighing out dough. So if you are one that does not want to weigh out your dough, don't worry about it. Just eyeball it and they'll still turn out just as delicious. This is very new for me.
So I'm gonna get this going. We already have 2, 4, 6, 8 waffles, and I have now measured out all of my bagel dough. I got more of the cranberry ones because obviously I added more weight to them. So I didn't make them quite as big. I'm letting the yeast ones rest a little bit, let the gluten structures relax a little bit while I shape these, and then we'll go back and put holes in the bagels. Now, when you're making bagels and you have inclusions in them, or I don't know if that's the right, inclusions, if you have something in them, you want to make sure that they're not sticking on the outside because they will burn. So when you're shaping them, trying to get all of the craisins or whatever it might be on the inside is a good idea. And then if you can't, I just pick them off and just work them into a different one. This dough is a lot softer, and I wonder if it's because there's sugar, more sugar on the outside of the craisins, that it's making the dough act a little different than the 100% whole wheat ones. Our water is about to boil. So now that I have all these shaped, I'm gonna go ahead and put this over here, or the pre-shape. These have relaxed a little bit, so they're gonna be easier to put the holes in. I'm preheating the oven to 450 degrees, actually both of my ovens over there. I just lined 2 cookie sheets with some parchment paper, and I am going to, I don't have any fresh, oh, I'm gonna take my waffles out. Perfect time for that. Get them refilled. It smells so good in here. These waffles are so good. I need to put some cornmeal or something down on this. Actually, I think I'm just gonna spray it with a little bit of spray. These don't have to rise very long for their second rise. And you can make the hole in the dough a couple ways. You can take your thumbs and put it through the center and pull apart the dough like this and make your hole. Or you can roll it into a log and close the ends. But I have found this is the easiest way for me to do it, to where I know they're not gonna fall apart in the boiling water. And if you let the gluten relax for just a minute while you shape them, then they don't spring back quite as much, and you can still have the hole in them. Now, because I'm gonna turn the majority of these into bagel sandwiches, it doesn't really matter if the hole closes. It's actually easier if the hole closes, because then you don't have cheese and things like that coming out of the bagel. Once you start making your own bagels, you are going to only want your own bagels because they are so delicious. Now, I'm hoping these whole wheat ones turn out really well, but anytime I make bagels, I always try to at least double or triple the recipe. In this case, I'm quadrupling it, but some of these, or quite a few of these items, are actually going, if I didn't mention it, to my sister-in-law and brother-in-law. My sister-in-law is about to have her second baby, and she's got a toddler, so quite a few of these breakfast meal preps are actually going to her house. I asked her what she would like for some meal prep, and she asked for easy things that she didn't have to think about. She does not really like cooking. Her husband doesn't really like cooking. And so breakfast sandwiches are amazing because all you have to do is heat them up. And so for some of the dinner items, I'm excited to share with you the recipes I found that we're gonna be making tomorrow that are just put in the oven and dinner is done. I just cover them just so that they don't dry out while they're rising. These don't need to rise very long. Our water is almost at a boil. I'm gonna need to get this rolled out and start cooking too soon. It is a little bit like musical chairs around here. So to my boiling water, my hands have spray on them. A little hard to open the honey. I'm gonna put a couple tablespoons of honey in this water. I'm also gonna put a little bit of baking soda. I normally don't put baking soda in my water for bagels, but I saw a different recipe that called for this, and I thought I would try it this time. Now, as soon as I take the bagels out of the boiling water, I need to get them onto a sheet to bake. So I'm gonna line a couple more baking sheets with parchment paper. So when I have a full sheet of bagels, I can pop them right into the oven. And this is definitely a stickier dough than the bagel recipe. I'm supposed to use cornmeal. Most traditional recipes say to use cornmeal. I don't think I have any. I do, which is good. The first time I ever had homemade English muffins was at this restaurant in Manzanita, Oregon, which is on the Oregon coast. It was a bakery that had, they called them Make Oceans, and they were their own homemade breakfast sandwich, and they made homemade English muffins. And these English muffins were incredible. We would drive to the beach. I mean, we would spend the day at the beach too, but we would always make an effort to go to Manzanita, Oregon to have these breakfast sandwiches. And I've never made homemade English muffins and then turned them into homemade breakfast sandwiches before, which is crazy to me because I've done it with all sorts of other homemade bread products. And today is the day we are going to make homemade English muffins, and then tomorrow I'm going to turn these English muffins into breakfast sandwiches. Now, anytime you manipulate dough that has gluten in it, it tightens up. And those gluten strands are kind of like rubber bands, and they want to tighten up. So if you just let your dough, if it's wanting to spring back, if you just let your dough rest for a few minutes, like we did when we were shaping the bagels, those gluten strands will relax, and then you'll be able to roll it out and it won't spring back. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna let that sit for a minute. I need another cookie sheet, but I'm running out of cookie sheets. Now I'm gonna sprinkle this cookie sheet with cornmeal. I want these to be nice, big, and fluffy because that's how they were at the bakery. They were probably twice as thick as an English muffin you would buy at the grocery store. So when I push on these bagels that I've shaped first, they're kind of holding the indent. So that means they are ready, which is perfect timing because my oven just beeped. I'm gonna put these in this water for 1 minute on each side. I'm using my roaster pan because I can get more bagels in here. When yeasted breads are under pressure, like when they're rising, the yeast is eating the carbohydrates and creating gas, and it's putting the dough under pressure. So if you push on the dough and that dough bounces back right away, that means the yeast are still eating the carbohydrates and producing gas, and the bread is under pressure because it's building that pressure to get the bread to rise. If you push on it and the indent stays just so slightly, you know it's done because it's not under as much pressure. The yeast isn't producing as much gas. If you push on it and it flattens, you've overproofed it. I'm gonna start turning these. Ah, that's stuck to the side. No. 1 minute on this side. Then I'm gonna get them on this cookie sheet and they're going straight in the oven. 2, 4, 6, 8. I think I can get 8 on this cookie sheet. And I don't time it. I am just guesstimating about what a minute is. Is it way over? Is it way under? Who's to say? So I'm making sure that I put them proof side up. So I am flipping them once I put them on this parchment paper. Trying to be gentle with them. I don't want to, I think I'm only going to get 6 on here. This is right now where if you wanted to put everything but the bagel seasoning, go ahead and put it on right now. I think I'm just gonna have these be plain and I need to get this out. I've got another cookie sheet right here. I'll get these on here. I'm gonna go ahead and pop this in the oven. I just set my timer for 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, I'm gonna rotate those bagels. And I did burn, or they're a little crispy, 1 set of waffles so far, so not too bad. The chickens will be happy to have some waffles. My cranberry bagels, I think are ready too. You can see how they're holding that indent a little bit. So I'm gonna get these 6 waffles in here. Not waffles, bagels. This is going so quick and easy. I kind of wish I made more because bagels freeze beautifully. My best friend growing up, she not when we were growing up, but when we were in college, she worked at a bagel shop as one of her college jobs. And when she would end her shift at the end of the day, she would take home bagels that didn't get bought, and she would freeze them, and they were delicious. So we ate a lot of bagels in college, and they were delicious. Jazzy's Bagels in Gresham, Oregon, if you've ever been there before. I've had many of a bagel there. I used to study there too sometimes when I was in college. I always liked to study at coffee shops or things like that as opposed to at home. I studied at home too, but not very often. Well, I just realized I did not put an egg wash on those bagels. They should get brown enough because there was enough sugar, I think, in that for them to get a nice brown topping, but it's too late now, and I'm sure they'll still be just as delicious. I'm gonna keep cooking my bagels, and I'm gonna go ahead and preheat my griddle pan. I have my stove off for the boiling water, and I opened a window because it is very steamy in here from all that boiling water. Now what I'm gonna do is start to shape my English muffins, and I want these to be pretty decent size because they are gonna be for a breakfast sandwich. So I want them to be the size of an egg. I think that one is the one I'm gonna do. Tons of air bubbles in this dough. Oh gosh, okay, so that was my timer for these. So that was 10 minutes, so those are gonna be rotated. So I think they're gonna get plenty brown. There was no need to worry on that end. I just took the temperature of these bagels, and we're at 210, which means they're fully cooked. I don't want them to get overcooked. This is perfect timing, because what I'm gonna do is reduce this top oven to, and I rotated the bottom bagels, to 300, so that I can finish the baking process, bake 300, the English muffins in this oven as they are done. I do want to get these bagels onto a cooling rack.
Friend, I'm just going to tell you right now that these homemade bagels using 1 part bread flour and 1 part fresh milled flour turned out incredible. We do a taste test at the end. We're going to cut into it. Josh is going to come in. We're going to taste them together. But I can just tell you they are so yummy. And I was a little worried that with the fresh milled flour, they would be kind of more dense and dry. But they were not dense. I mean, they were dense like you want a bagel to be, like dense and chewy, but they were not dry. And I was worried because I sometimes am a worrier when I try new things when it comes to in the kitchen, especially when I do something like quadruple the recipe without recipe testing that first. And it's kind of high stakes because I'm going to be gifting my plan is to gift half of these bagels away in breakfast sandwich form to my sister-in-law and brother-in-law. And then I was worried that when I turned these into breakfast sandwiches, they would be dry because I have only ever used store-bought bagels or 100% bread, like all-purpose bread flour. But I'm just going to tell you now, they are absolutely delicious. Josh and I have had one of these breakfast sandwiches for breakfast for the past 3 days in a row. And you'll see how many I end up making on the following day, because we do turn them into breakfast sandwiches. But I wish I had made more. This seems like a lot on this day, and I'm even thinking, wow, I am making a lot, but they're so good. So, you know, stuff like this, when it's homemade and it turns out delicious, you know, for me, it's really nice when I do make a lot because we really, really enjoy it. So I just wanted to give you a little heads up that they turned out delicious. So maybe next time I'll try even putting more fresh flour.
We are making absolutely fantastic time today. We already have our English muffins basically done. Let's check the bottom of these. Yep, I'm gonna go ahead and turn these. Our waffles are done. I just took the last one out, so I'm gonna go ahead and unplug this. We're gonna get going on our tortilla dough in just a second. I have to find my flipper. I think I have everything out I need to make our tortillas. I have my water. We are going to make quite a few of them. These are the only things that are not going to be turned into a breakfast item. These are going to be turned into beef burritos that are going to be delicious, or at least that's my hope. Okay, so I already have 2 cups of fresh milled flour. Now I'm going to put 10 cups of all-purpose flour. I better count or I'll forget. So that was 2, 3, 4, 9. The reason I'm making so much dough is because we're gonna make these burrito size, which I have never done before. So this is gonna be interesting. Now we need to add baking powder and salt. And I'm gonna use some home rendered lard. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mix that in. Baking powder. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Mix that. 2/3 of lard times 2. Four cups of hot water. So I could quadruple this recipe in this mixer, but I just had to keep the lid off so that the excess dough could kind of bounce around. In here, I have the window open because it was very steamy and I can hear birds chirping out there, which is kind of nice. So here is our tortilla dough. Normally when I make tortillas, I make kind of more like taco size, 6 inches or so. And I need at least 10-inch tortillas to make burrito size. So what I'm gonna do is get this really soft, beautiful dough in a ball over here. And I'm actually going to cut some dough off. I'm gonna figure out how much dough I need in order to get the thickness I want and the size I want. So this is just kind of an experiment here. So this is 98 grams. Let's see, I'm just gonna set this dough in here for now. Normally what I would do is roll out my dough into little balls, let it rest, and then roll it out. I can already tell this is not gonna be enough dough. So let's add another 30 grams, so that's 132 grams. I have rounds on here that say how wide something is. So I don't have to grab a tape measure or anything like that. This gets me at 10 inches. It's not perfectly round, but it gets me to the thickness and to the size I want. So my skillet over here is still hot. I think what I'm gonna do is just roll one out at a time, weigh it out to 130-ish grams. Maybe I'll get a few ready. I don't know how many I'm gonna get. I put a piece of foil on the top. We're at 207 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 97.7 degrees Celsius, just so that they wouldn't brown anymore. Get these out of the oven. (95 degrees Celsius) or 205 degrees Fahrenheit. So these ones can come out too. These tortillas are done being cooked. I need to get them in a towel. The steaming of the towel helps the cooking process.
At this point, our bagels are done, our English muffins are done, and our waffles are done. What I'm focusing on now solely are these tortillas. And I've got a couple things that I kind of have to focus on. I'm trying to cook the tortillas, roll out the tortillas, and also weigh out the tortillas and turn that dough into a disc. It takes about a minute to cook the tortillas on each side. So I have a little bit of time while one tortilla is cooking to work on weighing out some dough, shaping it into a disc, and then working on rolling out some dough. Ideally, once you shape your dough into a disc, before you roll it out, it's best if that dough can kind of rest for a few minutes so that it is easier to roll out, because you allow those gluten strands again to relax. So that's what one tortilla looks like being cooked. I am just going back and forth from my island, rolling out dough, weighing out dough, to cooking tortillas and putting them in the towel so they can continue to steam in the towel, and the finished cooking time will happen actually in the towel as the tortillas all steam together. Now, last time I made tortillas using some fresh milled wheat, I did 1 part fresh milled wheat to 2 parts all-purpose flour, and I used oil, not lard. Now, I can tell you this right now about these tortillas. You will see what they look like all done. They cook up beautifully. They're super soft and tender. They are absolutely delicious. But I used lard this time instead of using oil. And the next day, they do dry out a little bit. So I am not able to actually use these tortillas to make the burritos that I want to make. And I'll go more into that when you come back and you see the big freezer cooking day. You're going to see what I end up doing. These tortillas are not a loss. We are still going to enjoy them. We actually had bean and cheese quesadillas for lunch yesterday, and they're absolutely delicious, but I was not able to roll them into a burrito because they were a little bit dry. So I'm going to need to keep playing around with fresh milled wheat and what oil or fat is the best when it comes to using fresh milled wheat and making tortillas. When I make tortillas using all-purpose flour, I can't really tell a difference on the flexibility and the softness between using lard and oil. The next day I can make up a bunch of tortillas. They're super soft and just absolutely delicious. If you've never made a homemade tortilla, there is a little bit of a learning curve when it comes to them, but once you feel proficient in it, they are so good. When it comes to cooking, the reason I fell in love with cooking is I love really good food, and a lot of times when you cook things yourself, they can taste so much better than store-bought. Now, that's not true for everything. There's definitely some things that I have not mastered, and I think store-bought is better, but I am learning the more I cook and the more proficient I get at cooking, the more I enjoy just a really good meal. And a lot of times if you make it homemade, it can taste so delicious. And what I want to get so proficient at is using fresh milled wheat. And now this is going to be a journey for me. I think I'm 34. Yes, I'm 34. So for the past, 25 years or so, I have been cooking with all-purpose flour, and I feel very comfortable cooking with all-purpose flour. When it comes to cooking with, you can see how soft these are. So the first day, they're super soft. If I had made these and turned them into burritos the day I made them, it would have worked perfectly. But because they sat overnight, even though I did wrap them up really well, they kind of dried out and I wasn't able to turn them into burritos. But what I was saying is that, I have been working with all-purpose flour for so many years, and I am very new. I don't even think I've had my grain mill for 5 months, and it's going to take me probably a few years to get to the point where I feel incredibly comfortable working with 100% fresh milled wheat. I am not an all or nothing person, so I don't mind slowly working on this skill and working with all-purpose flour and fresh milled grains. But when I was doing this cooking on this day, I was listening to a talk by Sue Becker. I had never listened to any of her talks until this day, and she was going into the history of how all-purpose white flour became available to the masses, because for most of humanity, white all-purpose flour was only available to the ultra wealthy, like kings and queens, and how just in the 1900s it basically became available. And she goes into the history and all these sorts of things about, wheat and the history of wheat, and it was super fascinating, and it was super encouraging and inspiring that yes, I do want to get super comfortable with working with fresh milled wheat, but I also want it to be absolutely delicious. And that's just going to take time to build that skill.
Josh just came down and he is going to do a taste test for us. It's a bit later and we are hungry, but we don't have to worry about dinner tonight because dinner, I put a lasagna in the oven.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Okay, so we've got 2 things we get to taste test. We have 2 different types of bagels.
Nice.
So we're just gonna taste test the bagels.
Well, they look great.
I'm not gonna lie, I may have already had a bite of one because a couple of these have already been snagged and enjoyed.
For shame.
I have 2 different ones here. So this is maple cranberry.
Okay.
And this is whole wheat, honey whole wheat. And they both have 50% fresh milled flour and 50% bread flour from the store.
Cool.
So I thought we would give them a try. What I'm gonna do tomorrow, I don't even know if you know this, I'm gonna turn these into breakfast sandwiches tomorrow.
That's gonna be awesome. I'm really excited to have some more of those in the house.
We quickly went through the last ones I made.
Blow through those things.
Yeah. So this might look like a lot, but trust me, they won't go to waste. Oh, do you want cream cheese?
Yeah, for
okay.
sure.
It's not toasted or anything.
That's okay.
Do you prefer the top or bottom
The top or bottom?
of the bagel?
I don't know. They both have their merits.
I prefer the top, so I'll give you the top.
Then I'll take the bottom.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Can I take a bite now, or do you want me
Yeah,
to
go
wait?
for it.
Since you already had some anyway.
I haven't tried the maple cranberry one yet.
That's great texture. Good chew.
Very good chew.
Nice.
Super nutty. It's good even without the cream cheese. With just a little butter on it, toasted.
I believe it. Yeah, that's really good. Nice work.
Josh just tried the
Non-cream cheesed.
Yeah.
That's really good. Great texture.
Yeah.
Great flavor.
Super good flavor. Now try this. This is maple cranberry. I'm gonna make breakfast sandwiches out of these. I thought the sweet cranberries with the cheese and egg and sausage will be really good.
Still getting the other part down. Oh yeah, that's great. Subtle sweetness.
This would be so good with cinnamon in it. I didn't want to put cinnamon because I wasn't sure how cinnamon and the
Raisins?
breakfast sandwich would go together. Or
That's
you
fair.
could put orange zest in this and use orange juice instead of water to make this. That would be really good. But again, we're going to turn them into breakfast sandwiches. And that was delicious. I am so looking forward to what those are going to become. They are perfect just on their own, but they are going to get even better when we work with them tomorrow. I have my pile here. All these bags are just going to sit here until tomorrow. Once these tortillas completely cool, I'll wrap those up and we're going to make those into burritos tomorrow. Here's a little peek at what my kitchen looks like. Dishwasher's going. These are clean dishes. Those need to be cleaned. Will I do it right now? Probably not. I think I'm gonna go ahead and take a break for a bit. I opened up a can of kombucha. I'm gonna go relax. I need to get the dishwasher unloaded and these dishes finished before tomorrow because when I do these big cooking days, I like to start the day with an unloaded dishwasher so that I can hit the ground running. If you're new, consider subscribing because this is just the beginning of what these yummy bagels, English muffins, waffles, and tortillas are bound to turn into. So this is just step one, so you don't want to miss it. And if you've been here before, I greatly appreciate every single one of you. You mean the world to me. I'll pop some more videos you can go enjoy between now and my next upload. I hope you are having a fantastic day, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, friend.